So warm welcome, colleagues. Great to see quite a few participants joining us today. We'll kick things off in just a moment, and I'll hand over to Wojciech, who'll lead us through an introduction. But before we do that, just a couple of quick kind of housekeeping aspects. We'll have quite a large group on the call today, and so we've enabled Zoom's question and answer feature. So if you kind of like scroll up the top there, you'll see the Q&A, click on that and you'll be able to ask questions to our speakers today. So please channel any queries you've got into the question and answer function. We will have 10 to 20 minutes towards the end where we'll make an effort to come back and try and get through as many of those as we can. If we don't get to some of your questions, we will endeavor to try and get some written feedback and share that back to you afterwards. We'll also be recording the sessions and making those available. So never mind, we'll have all those kind of things ready. Do use the question and answer function throughout today. You'll have a couple of guest speakers, so if anything comes to mind, use that Q&A. We'll come back to it at the end. You can also upvote any questions as they come through, and that'll mean we'll kind of go through sequence-wise towards the end. You can also chat to the speakers as we go, but try and keep any of your actual questions in the Q&A function. We've got a pretty packed agenda, so we'll try and get through things pretty quick. And with that, I will hand over to Wojciech, who is the acting chief of UNICEF's Digital Center for Excellence. Over to you, Wojciech, to take us away with an introduction. Over.
Thanks, Ben. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm also the regional chief of IT for UNICEF South Asia, so I have two hats at the moment. Today, I'd like to welcome you to the webinar on ParentText, a free interactive text messaging system to promote physical and mental health and child well-being using the RapidPro platform. We know that issues such as domestic violence and in particular child abuse have been a problem in many countries for some time and have particularly intensified during the COVID pandemic, with some countries reporting high levels of violence against children. For example, with 80 to 85% of children in some districts or provinces experiencing some form of violence. This is where the applications such as ParentText come in. Developed by the Parenting for Lifelong Health, in collaboration with WHO, UNICEF, the Global Partnership to End Violence, USAID, and the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention as one of the open source COVID-19 parenting resources, condensing evidence from multiple randomized trials of child abuse prevention programs in low-income countries. ParentText provides much needed advice in the hands of millions of parents across the world, increasing the accessibility and engagement of such parenting resources. It is built using RapidPro. You are familiar with RapidPro, which is an open source software platform that is made available by the Global UNICEF Digital Center of Excellence, where I'm currently the chief, and partners as a digital public good, allowing programs such as ParentText the foundation to more easily build and scale mobile-based applications from anywhere in the world. We hope that this presentation can provide a great overview of one of the many applications built on top of the RapidPro ecosystem, and that you will be motivated not just to explore the potential for scaling ParentText in your own country offices, but also to reimagine how RapidPro can bring value and greater engagement to meet many of your program goals and demands. Today, we are very pleased to welcome the Parenting for Lifelong Health team who have been leading this very important work. Let me introduce the first speaker. Dr. Jamie Lachman has over 20 years of experience developing, testing, and scaling up family and parenting programs to reduce violence against children and improve children's well-being in low and middle-income countries. He's also a senior research officer at the University of Oxford Department of Social Policy and Intervention. He's also the lead principal investigator of the Global Parenting Initiative and a co-founder of Parenting for Lifelong Health. The digital and in-person programs and resources that Jamie has developed have reached over 196 million beneficiaries in 198 countries and territories. So that's a very significant reach and an accomplishment. He's also a storyteller, banjo player, songwriter, facilitator, and a clown, a man after my own heart. And he's dedicated to promoting our human capacity for peace and laughter. And Jamie strives to live each day fully with compassion and amazement. So we look very much to hear from him. And as you can see, he did not bring his clown outfit today, but nevertheless, we'll be looking very much forward to hearing from him later. Our next speaker is Sarah Thakur, who is a public health graduate, and she has worked with the Global Partnership to End Violence Against Children and the Violence Prevention Team at the WHO headquarters. She has joined the University of Oxford Department of Social Policy and Intervention, and also Parenting for Lifelong Health at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, and since then worked on the dissemination of evidence-informed parenting resources, which are part of 34 government COVID-19 responses. She currently leads the Parenting for Lifelong Health ParentText team, providing support to UNICEF country offices and other partners on adaptation and deployment of the evidence-informed interactive parenting chatbot via Rapid Pro. Finally, I'd like to introduce our UNICEF colleague, Sarah Norton-Stahl, who has been working for the UNICEF for the last 30 years, including more than 10 years with the UNHCR in Eastern Africa and 20 years with UNICEF in East and Southern Africa and in Southeast Asia. Her work has focused primarily on community services and child protection support, including for refugees and children affected by migration and armed conflict, as well as a focus on addressing and ending all forms of violence against children, including child online protection and social welfare strengthening. Mrs. Norton-Stahl has completed a postgraduate studies in anthropology and African studies with the focus on gender and development. So very warm welcome to all of you. We very much look forward to hearing from you, although I understand that Sarah Thakur might not be able to present today, but without much further ado, over to you, Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wojciech, for that wonderful introduction and for inviting us to be part of this session where we are really looking to share the development and innovation that we've been doing with Rapid Pro, mostly thanks to the instigation and collaboration with UNICEF country offices, namely the country office in Malaysia, who introduced us to the idea of using interactive parenting text messages via Rapid Pro during the COVID-19 pandemic. Just seeing if I can, yeah, okay. So I'm going to give a little bit of an overview and background of ParentText, which is a Parenting for Lifelong Health program that we've been developing with UNICEF and the World Health Organization, really focused on providing interactive text messaging chatbots to promote physical and mental health and well-being for children. And so our main objectives of Parenting for Lifelong Health and also ParentText is to provide evidence-based and interactive integrated parenting support that's part of or embedded within existing programs and can be delivered at scale, with then the outcomes that we're looking for achieving, first to help caregivers to nurture their child's development, through positive and playful parenting, in the context, especially during COVID-19, but also the long-term impacts of COVID-19 on reduced child-related services, really to give them the skills and capacity to protect children and support families, again, with the multiple stressors, and to prevent physical, emotional, and sexual violence against children. So when we think about what is needed and thinking about how we can reach parents at scale to provide them with evidence-based and useful and effective resources, The first is that they really need to be effective. We need to demonstrate that they work, that they're low cost so that they can be widely disseminated, and that they're non-commercial. So we're not paying for user fees and licensing fees. We also need to have a wide range of delivery approaches. So this isn't like the silver bullet approach where one thing is going to work, but really trying to find out what's the best for the context of the environment that families are living in. This range of delivery approaches can be a combination of remote support integrated with personal or in-person support. And really, there's a need to reach entire populations at speed. So while we're trying to do these developments, we're also feeling the pressure to support families, especially during COVID-19 and beyond. There's also a need to customize the approaches for local populations, governments, and organizations. And this also is not only the cultural adaptation that is required to be relevant to families who are needing support, but also the contextual integration within other services so that these aren't standalone approaches. So just a short background about Parenting for Lifelong Health. It was started in 2011 in collaboration with UNICEF and the World Health Organization and a number of universities, including the University of Oxford, where I am based. And its aim was to reduce the risk of violence against children and improve child well-being across the life course for children. And there were different suites of programs for infants, toddlers, young children, and teens that were rigorously tested in a number of randomized controlled trials. We're listing 11 of them here. Most recently, we just published in the Lancet Regional Health Western Pacific randomized controlled trial of the program in the Philippines. We have one forthcoming of a trial in Thailand that was done with the Ministry of Public Health. And by 2020, it was being implemented in 29 countries for approximately 400,000 families. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we co-led with UNICEF and other partners the COVID-19 Playful Parenting Emergency Response. And this led to the adaptation of Parenting for Lifelong Health and the Care for the Child Development programs into a range of resources many of you are familiar with. And to this date, we have now reached over 197 million. And here's some examples. For instance, in the Philippines, we did webinars for the Department of Social Welfare and Development, and with UNICEF for families and frontline service providers in Malaysia. Their outreach reached over 1 million people. And in Laos, PDR, we helped the UNICEF adapted the resources into public service announcements that were then disseminated to over 50% of the population. This led us to thinking about a hybrid human digital playful parenting approach, where we are looking at, we have been developing, in addition to the in-person programs, different other modalities of delivering evidence-based parenting support. And this includes parent chat, which is online parent support groups delivered through Viber or WhatsApp by a trained facilitator. Parent app, which is an online first app for parents with adolescents. It's being piloted in South Africa and Tanzania. And ParentText, which I'm going to talk about in more detail. So ParentText is a chatbot, and it's been developed through the Rapid Pro system. So with for those of you from the T4D or C4D background, with the different flows that bring parents through an interactive experience. And really what we were trying to do was model the way that programs are delivered in person, but through a chatbot, so through a conversation. And so as you'll experience in the taster session, there's an introduction of a parenting skills, and there's a modeling of those skills through either a video explaining what the key tips are and comics demonstrating parents engaging that. There's an assignment of a home practice or things to do. And then we provide check-ins afterwards, so to help parents troubleshoot any challenges that they might have experienced. And we used a lot of the information we learned from in-person programs to kind of identify what are those core challenges that families experience. And of course, there's stress reduction and supportive messages, because we also recognize that parents are always experiencing a lot of stress, especially in adverse situations. The chatbot is also customized by parent gender and the target child's age with the types of messages that they receive. The evidence-based parenting content that is derived from Parenting for Lifelong Health and also the Care for Child Development and others is a range of topics, including positive parent-child relationships, information around early child development and how to be involved in early learning and school learning, both remote and going back to school, how to manage difficult child behavior and providing parents with non-violent discipline alternatives, child safety, both online and in the community, sexual violence prevention, stress reduction, and intimate partner relationships. And the latter, the sexual violence and intimate partner relationships, is really looking at also addressing some of those key elements of UNICEF's Gender Action Plan. So we've really working closely with our colleagues at UNICEF tried to align with the UNICEF's priorities of programming at scale for having demonstrable results for children, supporting family relationships, online child safety, addressing their flows that are specifically customized for families who are supporting children living with disabilities, the education and quality learning aspects of sexual reproductive health, and then the Gender Action Plan. One of the things that we've found is really important is within the chatbot, since you do not have a human element to support parents, we wanted to follow the RCCE guidelines from UNICEF on how to safeguard for potential harm that might happen. So some of the elements that we've built into the chatbot is a help menu, so users can access specific content on demand. There's contact information for emergencies. They can also customize their technical support that they receive. Then there's also built-in sensitivity for keywords. For instance, if a parent would user writes down that I am being beaten by my husband, it will be able to keep that we've developed some ability to target or identify those words, and then a message like the one that you see on the right comes up, and also the local referrals that are customized by region and country with contact details to local agencies and support outside of the chatbot. Eventually, we hope to integrate the chatbot with other in-person content so that it isn't standing alone. We also have built in a monitoring and evaluation mechanism within the chatbot to measure its impact and engagement. With the impact, we're looking at really brief surveys that can be filled out by parents in less than 5 minutes that assess behavior change at 2-week intervals. And the outcomes that are built into the chatbot itself are looking at playful parenting, harsh discipline, parenting and financial stress, parenting efficacy, child behavior, and intimate partner violence prevention. And we'll show you in the taster how this works within the surveys. These are anonymous and optional, so parents do not have to fill these out to participate and receive the tips from the ParentText. We're also quite keen on looking into, moving to the next slide. I could get a little. Maybe Ben, you could help me move that slide over to the next one. Thank you. Measuring engagement, and we built a mini dashboard to help students to track how parents engage in, or users engage in the chatbot. And this can be done disaggregated by geography or region, the parent gender, the child age, and customized for a country office. We're looking at really the amount and frequency and duration of interactions within the chatbot, how they complete specific skills, how they engage in the surveys, what's the different weak points of different population groups that might have higher rates of dropout or higher rates of retention, and also looking for qualitative in this initial phases, qualitative feedback from parents. And this is really critical because if they don't engage, how can we see impact? Moving to the next slide. Thank you. So one of the ways that we're also considering how ParentText can be delivered or implemented in a given context. First, you can think about it as ParentText with additional support. So there may be introducing ParentText by a trained facilitator, a caseworker, a social auxiliary worker, maybe a health worker who introduces it to a parent and then maybe checks in with them from time to time. You can also think of ParentText as a way of using it to supplement in-person sessions or reinforce home practice. So it could be done in alignment, or there could be maybe 2 or 3 in-person sections where there's a facilitator or like a brief kind of introductory workshop with a group of parents. They go through ParentText and maybe they have different check-in points along the way. And then also ParentText can be self-led, disseminated to beneficiaries, and they can just go through it. And this could be disseminated via like social media for anybody who might be interested in receiving support. You could also use it for waitlisting beneficiaries who might not necessarily be able to receive the in-person programs due to limited resources. We're also working closely with trying to integrate them with existing government interventions, hotlines, and other support services. Next slide. So thinking about the main steps to deployment, we really starting with the local contextualization, and this is quite critical and takes really a lot of work in collaboration with country offices and local partners to identify what are the local stakeholders, the government partners, local organizations, a content review of the ParentText as it is in its global sense and adaptation to the local setting for cultural purposes as well, and then translation and multimedia production of videos, audios, and comics. Then when we get into preparing for a launch, we create deployment plans in close collaboration with UNICEF and partners, dissemination strategies. Sometimes this is led by UNICEF Communications or C4D, creating marketing collateral to recruit parents and caregivers into the chatbot. Then there's an initial piloting and monitoring and evaluation phase, where we're doing some user testing with a smaller group, some initial piloting with a targeted larger group, and then refinement based on that feedback. So really making sure that it is customized to the local setting, and monitoring that early engagement and impact is really critical there. And then with the long-term, looking at scale up and integration through schools, social protection, businesses, and other stakeholders, and that ongoing monitoring and evaluation, content refinement, and optimization work. And if we go to the next slide. So currently we are piloting ParentText in 5 different countries, in Malaysia and Philippines, South Africa, Sri Lanka, and Jamaica. And our colleagues from UNICEF Malaysia will give you a little bit more details about how things are going there. We're still in the early stages of piloting. And we're in discussion with the country offices in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Mexico. Next slide. And so I know that Sarah is going to talk a little bit more about the work in Malaysia, but this is led by the UNICEF country office in collaboration also with our academic colleagues at University Putra Malaysia. We're looking at delivering it through via the chatbot through WhatsApp. And at the moment, doing some user testing with a local NGO and with the government staff members from the National Population and Family Development Board, with some piloting with staff members who are parents, looking towards a mid-November launch via U-Report, social media, sponsored advertisements, and also the wider parenting stakeholder groups who would help with the dissemination. The next slide. So in the Philippines, we're integrating the ParentText within the conditional cash transfer that is led by the Department of Social Welfare and Development. So its format and the frequency is really in alignment with the key parenting topics that are part of their EFDS or e-family development sessions. This will be delivered via Facebook Messenger. So different areas and different contexts is a platform for delivery of ParentText really can be adjusted to fit where the population is mostly engaging in social media. And so what we're going to be doing is an initial pilot in Valenzuela City and Metro Manila for wider rollout next year after the election. And then we're moving to, so thank you very much. And before we go into the taster session, I'd like to hand it over now to my colleague, Sarah Norton-Stahl.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Jamie, very much for the global overview, including reference to what's been going on in Malaysia. I think you can go ahead, Ben, and go into the next slide. So just in brief, I think Jamie already talked a bit about it, but the background for the parenting work in Malaysia is that we started initially by developing modules or case studies in partnership with the government and with UPM leading, and with Maestral, where Jamie was working at that time. And it was really about developing a wealth of materials to address parenting needs on particularly challenging areas of work, including sexual and reproductive health, digital parenting or child online protection issues, as well as child marriage. So we really wanted to touch on those very sensitive topics to help engage parents in a culturally and socially relevant context. Next slide, please. So again, just looking at what were the objectives of this project, again, starting in 2017, and this initial phase went through 2019. It was really about strengthening programs to reduce violence against children as a key aim. And again, working very closely with a government partner and with Parenting for Lifelong Health as an example, as a model adapted to the Malaysian socio-cultural context. So it was really excellent that our first pilot showed that overall maltreatment, physical abuse, attitudes, and support for corporal punishment was positively addressed. And we successfully did some capacity training of the government and UPM staff, as well as we expanded the work beyond Kuala Lumpur and into Kota Kinabalu. So I think it was important that we wanted to just broaden the reach and the scope of the project to some of the more underserved areas of the country. Next slide, please. So then while we are moving along with the vision for a lot of face-to-face work, the COVID-19 pandemic made us confront a realization of the need to change our vision. And I think it was great that Jamie reached out to us and said, let's do parenting work in a way that we can continue during the pandemic. Malaysia went into a lockdown we had for months, so no possibility of any more face-to-face capacity building. So we shifted gears into the online parenting tips. And I think this was really a great opportunity in Malaysia. We had a lot of multi-sectoral work on that, worked very closely with our communications team, the C4D colleagues, innovations. And so we really got, I think, a bigger group of people working together and looking at how can we expand the initial work done with UPM and the Ministry of Women and can to reach a bigger audience. And I think the thing that was really great about it is that before we'd had a problem reaching fathers, we mostly had been reaching mothers. And through the online work, we had a much wider reach. Okay, you can have the next slide. And some of the methods and tools that we've been using, we're doing ParentText via Rapid Pro, and that's supporting the deployment, monitoring, evaluation, as already mentioned by Jamie. And then we're also having parent chat, including online parenting groups, and adopting this so there can be parent support groups with the B40, and those are the sort of lower income groups in Malaysia. And also realizing that it's important that we reach out to faith-based groups to disseminate more evidence-based information on parenting amongst religious communities in Malaysia. Next, please. And just looking at some of the key objectives of our work, again, we wanted to find the way to have the most impactful and cost-effective and scalable programs, and to have the highest possible retention rate, because we wanted to make sure our investment was sustainable. And also we wanted to be able to measure, because with everything we do, we need to measure the impact and make sure that what we're doing is contributing to better results for children and child protection. Again, we also needed to identify what were the barriers and the facilitators to enrollment and engagement, noting that we had recognized initially we were having a trouble reaching fathers as much as mothers. And we also wanted to examine different ways to enroll or engage based on the different population characteristics. Next slide, please. And then just looking at who's doing what in Malaysia, because I think it's so important to see that there's many actors, many agencies are engaged in this work. UNICEF, we're working on stakeholder engagement, looking at developing the implementation strategy, how to work with Rapid Pro hosting for ParentText. And then our partner, our government partner, ParentText, they're working on systems integration and coordination of ParentText and ParentText deployment, as well as the national scale-up. And it's just so important that we have this commitment from the government. And I just feel really pleased with the partnership we've been able to develop with ParentText. I just want to say that sometimes there's many sensitive issues we deal with in child protection that are sometimes hard to sell, but that with parenting, this is something that is so well received. I think we don't really face opposition or many obstacles as we do with some of the other topics in child protection. So in that way, it's a great entry point for many other difficult topics. Moving on, again, we have University of Putra Malaya. And looking at the work that they do, local contextualization, some of the training, importantly is in the government and some of the M&E work. And then again, of course, Oxford and PLH, they're doing more of the development and testing, again, M&E and creating implementation strategies. And then finally, we have IDIMS, who's doing some of the technical work, and M&E again. Next slide. Thank you. Finally, looking at some of what's happening right now, some of the pilot and recruiting via Rapid Pro. This is just letting you know it has been a challenge. Things have moved a bit slower, obviously because of COVID and because we've had a lot of changes in the political administration in Malaysia in the past year, and that's also created certain delays. But the ParentText chatbot is programmed in Rapid Pro, and it has its dedicated Rapid Pro account and channels. And there are first interactions with ParentText triggered by user. We have engagements that are completely anonymous, and there's recruitment by sponsored advertisements. And as well, messages can be customized based on users' gender, age, and location. And there's offers for user incentives. And just to emphasize on Rapid Pro, they are currently working with UNICEF South Africa, doing the same. So to go ahead, next slide. And then a new innovation, which Jamie mentioned earlier today, we've just embarked on how we can engage more with families and children affected by migration and refugee communities, because we really want to meet all the underserved populations in Malaysia. And so we have been working with a range of partners. We just had a webinar today, in fact, with many different agency partners in Malaysia to look at how we can adopt the programs that we've put in place and make them relevant for refugee and migrant affected populations. And so again, it's about cultural and contextual adaptation and working with local stakeholders, and then how to set up a pilot to focus on assessing the feasibility of this program, initially with Rohingya refugees. And this project will sit within a larger ongoing initiative to provide support to parents in humanitarian settings within Malaysia and Bangladesh. Next, please. So again, finally, just to look at some of the key things that we hope we can achieve, strengthen service delivery among them, and adaptations to parenting programs that can be delivered online, obviously in the face of the pandemic and beyond. We've realized that much can be done even when you face the challenges of such a pandemic, and we can continue to improve service delivery now, and we also can be more prepared for any future emergency. And again, expecting that 50,000 vulnerable families in Malaysia will have increased access to positive parenting resources, and that these resources created at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, they've already reached 86 million families. So I think that's a great result. Next slide, please. And just quickly, just to look at some of the lessons we've learned. And I mentioned that parenting support interventions are really appreciated and welcome in Malaysia to address child protection. And I think the important role that parents play in protecting and supporting children is understood. And I think we recognize in so many of our programs that parents are seeking guidance on challenging and emerging issues, particularly in Malaysia around the issue of child online protection, digital parenting, as well as issues around children with disabilities, the particular needs parents of children with disabilities face. So again, a key challenge of greater parental involvement is how to scale up parenting support efforts, and training that reaches only a small group of parents doesn't have the needed impact, and how we can engage more men and fathers. Those are some significant things we're working on. Also adapting the existing training to support online demands with new methods and tools and platforms. And this has been particularly successful, particularly during COVID. And also that we're sharing and learning from experience in other ASEAN countries. I think that there is a great network of partners in ASEAN, and that we have learned from each other, we've been able to share, and this has strengthened parenting programs through the various regional conferences and events that we have, and we really appreciate the chance to share and learn from the Philippines or other countries. Also, the continuing efforts to build on the strong partnership is really critical. And so again, the ownership and involvement for our government partners is what's made the program a success for us. So thanks very much. And the next slide, I think, is the last. Thank you again. Thank you. And thanks very much to Oxford, Maestral, to Jamie and his team. I really feel this is something that will leave a great legacy for child protection in Malaysia and the region. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah, and especially for your kind words. It's always been a wonderful collaboration. We learned so much from working with you and your team and in Malaysia, and it has had such great impact in other countries as well. I really appreciate that. So now we're going to demo the ParentText, or do a taster session. I'm looking at the time and I'm noticing that we don't have very much time. So in a way, I'm going to allow you to go through this yourself. If you follow these instructions by downloading Telegram onto your phone, we use that as our sandbox or our playbox for ParentText, although because it's free and we don't need to worry about business credits like you would in WhatsApp, but it's not the platform that we recommend for dissemination, but just for tasters. If you search for ParentText short demo, you'll find that demo there. You can start going through it yourself. But I am going to now ask Ben if I can share my screen, please, so that I can show you the ParentText demo from our side. So I'm going to share, if you can all see the ParentText short demo here. So we're going to start a test here. So this is the kind of simulation. And so first I'd like to share with you the welcome flow, which is the introduction to the first interaction that parents have. And as you can see here at the top, you'll see that it first comes out in the local language. And so no matter how many languages you have, it will repeat this message so that people can understand. We're going to go through it in English because I do not speak Bahasa Melayu. So there's some introductory messages. And then because this is part of, we're learning about how to improve the chatbot for engagement and impact, we do have a participation kind of informed consent form that you could click on to receive it. And in order to proceed, the user needs to agree. And one of the things we're looking at is also how many people engage but do not go on because they do not give consent to participate. So we're going to say yes here, get a nice message thanking them so much, and then some kind of getting to know you questions about making sure that the user is over 18. and you can actually go through it and say no, and then it will say, well, a different message. Then you have an option for choosing what kind of level of data would you like. So for people who are concerned with the data burden, they might choose just a text and message, but I'm going to choose the starred version, which is text message, texts, images, audios, and videos. And then there's a customization question around gender. You do not have to answer this. You can type N, but I'm going to say that I'm a man. Another thing, and we're really trying to keep the answers and the interactions with ParentText simple for the users. So they're usually mostly numbers. Here, there you can put in your nickname or name, or you don't have to share. But if you do, then it customizes it to say, thank you, nice to meet you, Jamie. So now it remembers my name. Then the other customization that we have is around selecting the child age range, because all of the content here is based on the specific developmental level of the child. So if you want to select another age, that's fine. I'm going to select the young children. So this is from 2 to 9 years old. And there could be further customization. So you could even create different content for 2 to 6 or 7 to 9 years old or early adolescents. And that is something that we would work with you and also local partners. So I'm going to say it's my child's a young child. Also offers me to say the nickname of the child, which then it will remember. I'm going to say Isla, because that's the name of my niece. We also want the best for our children. So the next one is around setting goals. And we know from evidence that goal setting is really important for someone's engagement in an intervention. So we're trying to build that into the chatbot. There's 6 different options here. Improving my child's relationship with my child to behave better, helping my child learn, reducing my family stress, keeping my child safe, and learning about child development. I'm going to just say, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to go for number 1, because I don't really have a very good relationship with Isla, so I want to learn. So I get a quick tip, which is spending a time with my child. It's free. Even 5 minutes a day can make a difference. And then you get a little congratulations, which is saying that we've started. This is the gamification component. So first layer of our house of support. And as this gets done, it gets filled in further the pictures. So the picture becomes a colored picture at the end. Setting goals is the foundation to building a positive relationship. Well done. And then because we've decided we wanted to get families to have option to get more content as much as possible for their specific goal, there's the option to learn more about improving their relationship with their child. I'm going to say yes, so that you get an idea of what that content flow is. Here's a video about spending one-on-one time with Isla. I'm going to kind of skip through that. So I just put any interaction there. So if you want to move quicker, if I'm moving too quick, you can go back. But if you want to go slower, you don't have to. Just any kind of interaction moves the chatbot and this demo forward. So now we have a little bit of one-on-one time, some information, and an option to learn more. And one of the reasons why we did this is we didn't want to be pushing the information at parents, but we really wanted them to kind of be able to select whether they want more information. So I'm going to say yes, I'd love to learn more. And so there's 6 tips now, and you could stop here and just look at these 6 tips. Or you could decide to even go more into this if you wanted to learn more. What do they mean by like following the child's lead? I'm kind of interested in that. So I'm going to put that down. And so I get a little bit more information around that. So follow your child's lead. Children need to do things in their own time. Try to give them time to explore and be patient. Play alongside and copy what they're doing. But let them try to keep the initiative. So that's kind of one of the ways that we can do that. Now, I don't have the time to go into more. So there are a couple of things that I would note here is if I didn't have time and I just left the chatbot now, especially when it's delivered through WhatsApp or Facebook, there's a 24-hour interaction limit. At the end of 24 hours, it will send a hook message just to remind me, hey, would you like to go back to where you were last? And then it's up to the user to interact. But say I just wanted to move on in the chatbot. So I said, no, I get a comic about spending one-on-one time. So these are the illustrated stories. We number them so that if they come in the wrong order, people can get them through. So here we have a parent who's observing using words to describe what they're seeing. Then they're kind of describing how they're building the tall, strong wall. It's looking at the child led. You can see they're on the same level. doesn't get into all of those details in the chatbot, but it's a way of showing them how they can spend one-on-one time with their child. And then the last, you get another message showing that you have achieved another level of your building in the house. This will be in the real version, you color in another thing. So maybe the flowers are colored in here. So moving on, I'm going to say no here, but you could get, if you said, well, we can say yes really quickly, and then you get an option for type of activity to do with your child. I want a calm activity. It randomly chooses one. So here's a storytelling one. And then lastly, it's looking for feedback on how things are going. So I'm going to say that it was extremely helpful. And now we're back into the beginning of the demo. This is the end. You get a little song for the as a kind of last message in the list. So that's the first interaction within the welcome. So maybe then what happens is 3 days later, the participant would get a check-in. So let's go and look at that check-in for one-on-one time. So the first thing is checking in to see if they were able to spend 5 minutes of one-on-one time with their children. And so here we could say yes or no, depending how you'd answer it, you just get a different message. I'm going to say I did have it, but I had a really bad time. It didn't work well for me. So I'm going to say it was bad. So then it looks at some of the troubleshooting. So it has a supportive kind of message. We understand that this is difficult. Here's some of the main reasons that parents struggle, which one is the closest to you, and then some different things. And these are basically come out of the years of doing parenting programs in person. They can also be customized if there are different issues. So say right now, I would say that I didn't have enough time. I'm a very busy parent and just did not have any time to spend with my child. So here and now I'm getting a little bit of a problem solving message during the day, maybe 5 minutes, even doing house chores into a game could do something together. So something that it's just to help them maybe think about other ways that they can spend time with their child. And then the last is an opportunity to review the content. I don't really feel like reviewing the content. So then that would be the end of the flow for check-in. So the last one that we wanted to show you quickly was the survey flow. So this is in the monitoring and evaluation component to really look at the how people interact, how we are measuring impact. So this comes on day 2 of interaction. And so it's first is asking if you can ask any questions. If you say no, it remembers that and then offers it a few days later. But after 2 tries, it stops offering the parent with the user to answer questions. If I say yes, then we go through a series of questions that are first looking at spending time with your child. And we kind of tried to think about it, how many days in the past week for most of these answers. So if I answer this at a low level, it will kind of give a reassuring question and saying, look, we know it's hard to do this, try your best. Now it will remember that input that I've said 2. And then if next week I said, and the next time that the survey comes along, I say 5, it gives me a praise message for the fact that I'm now spending more time with my child. So the next is around how many times you praise your child. I'm going to also say I don't do this very often. So it gives me another message that is around trying to kind of boost that praise. So the monitoring is really part of the intervention in a way. Then around being stressed, I'm going to say that I was very stressed as a parent. So every day, because I have a lot of things. And so there's a reassuring message, and then an offer for a brief relaxation activity. You could say, and when you demo this, you could say yes, but for time, I'm going to say no. Then we're looking at emotional abuse with children or psychological aggression. And say this happened quite often for me. So it gives me a kind of a message to help me maybe in the next time. It can be difficult to control your anger. It also remembers that, so it can customize the content for the child. Then around physical discipline, I'm going to say that this didn't happen at all. And so I'll say 0. And then it gives me a positive message saying that's great that you're responding in a calm way when the child does something upsetting. They can learn so much from you just in that responding way. And then we look at some questions around financial stress. Knowing that this is really highly correlated and associated to violence against children and reduced child outcomes. So I'm going to say it happened quite a lot. And in the last 30 days, I ran out of money for, I don't want to answer this one, so I'm going to say, I could say no, but I'm going to actually say it happened about 15 times.
Jamie, if I could just interrupt quickly, we've got a whole heap of questions for you. So if you can wrap things up, that'd be great.
Wrap it up really quickly. So, all right, so then there's a one around positive relationships. So this is parent efficacy. And then there's another one around, the next one is around a bonus question around keeping a child safe from sexual violence online and offline. And I'm going to just say it happened, and we talked about it 3 times. And so this is also another kind of customized. And then there's some child behavior questions. They're quite quickly that I had already said in the thing that in the previous flow that this was the most challenging behavior was hitting others. I'm going to say that this isn't very hard, and so I'm making improvement. It remembers that, and that's the end. And I get a little congratulations that I've completed level 1 of the survey, and that's the end of the simulation. So this is now on you. You can try this and play around with this as much as you want as well. And thank you very much. There we go.
Thanks.
Wrapped it up.
Jamie, we've got just under 10 minutes to get through what looks like some great questions coming in from the audience. So I'll kick us off with the first one, and maybe I'll ask both PLH colleagues and maybe Wojciech, if you're there, to come in for a little bit and talk about this from the UNICEF side as well. So wonderful presentation is the first comment you've got. Do you have any data protection mechanisms in place within the ParentText application? And maybe over to you, Jamie.
So there are a couple of things with data protection that we've been able to work out with the Malaysian office now. We're applying with other places. And the first is that we, when the information that they put in the chatbot is anonymized for UNICEF and for any others. So it's an automatic feature that you can put in Rapid Pro where the identity of the IP address or the phone number gets scrubbed. So first of all data is anonymized at the point of collection, and that's the main data protection issue that we were concerned about. The other aspect that we have to be aware of, and this comes within the consent, is that if you're interacting through WhatsApp or Facebook, that the data control, the information that is put in there isn't owned by UNICEF or Parenting for Lifelong Health. It's actually owned by Facebook. But in WhatsApp, at least, it's encrypted. So we're also using the two-way encryption. I'm sure, Ben, you might be able to, or Wojciech might be also be able to include more information about data protection issues through Rapid Pro.
I think, sort of maybe just to add, and Jamie has already touched on it, that, Rapid Pro in general, not just necessarily as part of ParentText, allows anonymizing of the information, including the contact numbers, right, of the respondents. So that's a primary, sort of system that you have in place. Now, the only thing to put as a caveat that once that feature is enabled, you can't reverse it. So if you effectively take the step that whatever data is being collected is anonymized, you cannot later on say, sorry, now we want to change that. And then the other thing is, even let's say if you decide for whatever reason, I mean, number one, recommendation is also, sort of, to put Rapid Pro instance on, which is based obviously in a hosted environment. So for example, typically, UNICEF deployments, I mean, there's maybe a couple of exceptions, are hosted in the cloud, right? That's really is the preferred method of the deployment because, that allows for the secure implementation and things like this, rather than having a local instance that, on a server somewhere that might obviously have its own issues in terms of the server security and things like that. So that's the only other aspect that I would add as well. Thanks.
Thanks,
I just want to
Wojciech.
add one other thing, Wojciech, which, and then that when we would like to do more in-depth research, what we do is we've programmed in ParentText to send a message saying, here's a link to participate in an external research. And then that goes through Oxford's secure servers on using Online Data Kit and ODK Connect. But that is external to the interaction of Rapid Pro. So you cannot connect their answers in Rapid Pro and ParentText to the information that they give in the in external research. So there's no linking of data within that.
Thanks, Jamie. And I can see there's been a few questions about accessing the live demo. Sarah's provided her email address there, so if you email her, you'll be able to get a link to the live demo that we've seen today. But moving on to the next question, and it's about age appropriateness. So Jamie, I think this is probably for you, and I'm going to combine two questions. One is, can a parent choose to receive information for two children at the same time? So you had a 5-year-old and a 6-month-old. Is there something you can do there? So can you kind of enroll two children, get two age-appropriate content at the same time? And then there's a similar question that says, if ParentText follows the journey of the child, if a parent is enrolled over time, will they receive a different kind of continuum of information over the years of maybe engaging with ParentText? Over to you.
Those are both really great questions. The first one is that you can't receive the same content you have to choose a target child to receive content. But for the activities level, it can be then you can receive content for any age of child, and it will, when you ask for activities, you can get like, for which child would you like to receive, and it gives those 3 age groups. But you can change the target child's age group through the help menu. It was one thing that we had considered when we were developing the chatbot, was to provide more flows and more streams, but then the complexity just starts to multiply. It's something that we could look into definitely in the future, is how you could get, for which child would you like content on one-on-one time for? And so we could add like a question of how many children do you have, for which age groups do you have? And then it could give that parent the option of, would you like child behavior management today for your 2-year-old, or would you like it for your 16-year-old? So there is possibility for innovation there. And then the other question was around the following the growth trajectory of a child through the chatbot. For us, we're optimistic when looking at research on chatbots for people to interact for up to 5 weeks in a chatbot. So if people do interact over time, that would be amazing. And maybe there is something to look into that for a long term, is how it could be more sensitive to the age, especially if you're a parent of a child of early age. So if you're joining when your child is like 1 month old, and I'm sure more development could be worked where we kind of track that pattern or the development of the child. And that's something we can look into in collaboration with you next year. It's not in the current iteration, but it's possible to develop.
Thanks, Jamie. Definitely interested to be part of that conversation. I know it's something that we've built into some of our early moments Matterbots. I'm going to skip a couple of questions and come to one that I see is for Sarah. It's disappeared on me.
I think I answered some of them in writing, and so maybe the questions disappear because I answered them. So I'm not sorry about that. I typed in the answers. Yeah, there was a question about the multi-sectoral team and how did I get that together, and I responded just saying that in Malaysia there were roles for the different sectors, and that communications was very supportive and sort of monitoring the numbers of people that were accessing online, and so we were able to give that data. I think Jamie has shared it, that Facebook Live and so forth. So they were very engaged in helping in the social media engagement and capturing the numbers of those accessing the materials. And then we had our innovations colleague, Ismail, was very involved in the Rapid Pro element and sort of some of the other technical aspects.
Thanks, Sarah. And I think in the interest of time, I really appreciate that Sarah and Sarah have been answering some of these questions in the background. We have unfortunately come to the end of the hour, but we will work with Jamie, work with Sarah to come up with written responses to any questions that we might have missed today. And we'll share that back to you all as part of the package with the recordings and the presentations from today. So I think I just want to come to one last question, and it's kind of already been answered there in writing, but it is, if you've heard something today and it sparked interest and you think maybe in my country, I could start adapting something like this, I could get started with a pilot, where do you go to for help? And I'll let Jamie come in on the PLH side in just a moment. But definitely from the UNICEF side, at the regional level, you've got your technology for development focal points. We support with more on the technical side of things, getting the infrastructure in place, but you've got your regional child protection advisors. And in this region, that's Rachel, and I know in Asaro there supporting South Africa, you've had a great team as well, Jamie. In Rosa, where Wojciech's based, you've got Amanda and Cecilia over there in West Africa. So definitely get in touch with the child protection team. Parenting is a cross-cutting function across all our programming, as you've heard. But at UNICEF, a lot of the leadership is really coming from our child protection teams. So that's a great internal starting point. Reach out to your regional advisor for child protection. They'll help align you with some of the other needs and whatnot. Over to you, Jamie, for some closing words from us, and maybe to let us know how we get in touch with PLH if we want to continue the conversation.
Thank you very much, Ben. Just to reiterate that our normal line of communication from Parenting for Lifelong Health is within the Child Protection Division, although we do work sometimes very closely with the ECD or the T4D or C4D. And it is, as Sarah said, a very intersectoral collaboration because it requires expertise from many different levels. We are really happy to provide support to any country offices in this using or taking up the Rapid Pro, the ParentText intervention, which is open source and freely available. If it requires some technical support from our side, there's sometimes some time and cost implications there, and we'd be happy to discuss that. But also, if you felt like you had the team that could do it yourself or the local connections that could do the adaptation and contextualization, then we're happy to give you the kind of sandbox, as it says, or the platform for ParentText to work with. Really, we're here to kind of work together with UNICEF to achieve our mission of supporting families and children across the lifespan, and really trying to do that at scale with evidence-based programming. So we're very grateful for the ongoing collaboration, and thank you so much again for your patience and for those very interesting questions in the Q&A.
Thanks, Jamie. I'll just give the floor to Wojciech to see if he wants to take us out. Thanks very much.
And thank you, Jamie and Sarah, for a very interesting, presentation as well as the demonstration, and particularly about, the practical implementation of ParentText in Malaysia, right? Because it actually does provide, sort of a good overview of how it can be deployed, who needs to be engaged, and in specific roles and responsibilities. Colleagues, as we have said at the beginning, I mean, ParentText is an example of an application developed, on the basis of the Rapid Pro ecosystem. So on one hand, we encourage you to obviously follow up from this particular, sort of webinar and get in touch with whether it's Jamie or perhaps Sarah, if you want to learn more about the experiences that they had, with implementing it in their own country offices. But at the same time, as we have indicated, have a think about maybe some other, use cases that you can see being supported by, further applications being developed on top of Rapid Pro. I think the organization is moving towards the stage where, we will have more and more mechanisms, for the development of digital public country context. And as Ben has just said, I mean, you obviously have a very good resource and, very good source of advice and technical consultants in your regional, T4D business analysts. So thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much to the presenters, so to Jamie, to Sarah. I know, Sarah Thakur, you were not able to speak because of a health issue, but again, we very much appreciate you being present here and also answering the questions. Thank you very much to all of you for your time and attendance. And and I hope that you found it useful. As Ben has said, we will share the questions and the recording from it as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.